Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University. Today we are looking at multi-tiered systems of supports. So let's get down to it. So let's examine multi-tiered systems of supports, and the big question is why? But before we get to the why, we must get to the what. What is MTSS exactly? Well, it's a bit difficult to get a handle on the what because of all the words that get slathered over it. Oh, the words, the words, the words, the words. Descriptors of MTSS are littered with flowery, enticing, enchanting words. But let's try to get a handle on it. A framework. Well, who doesn't want a framework? Tiered instruction, support, right focus, intensity, tiered data-informed framework. My goodness. A proactive and preventive framework integrates data and instruction, maximize student achievement, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, strength-based perspective, multi-level prevention system, data-based decisions. I'm getting goosebumps. How could anyone not want this thing? Continuous improvement framework, database problem solving and decision making, supporting students' high achievement, evidence-based instruction, organizes resources, alignment of academic standards and behavioral expectations, implemented with fidelity. I really don't know what this jumble of words means, but I must have it. I simply must. Integration, comprehensive framework, differentiated learning, student-centered learning, individualized student needs, alignment of systems, academic, behavioral, social needs, systematic change, intentional design, and redesign of services. Oh goodness, this sounds incredible! Best practices, whole child, targeted and intensive interventions. Integrated set of practices, emerging applications, transformational instructional practice, socio-behavioral outcomes. Oh, stop! I simply must have this. Now, this actually is the clearest definition I could find in the various books, articles, and websites. But to be honest, I still don't know exactly what this is. The websites, books, and articles spew forth in excess of wonderful, glorious words, delightful, inspirational, aspirational words. Who wouldn't want a redesign of integrated services? Who wouldn't want their paradigm shifted? Who wouldn't want their processes to be transformational? But these words simply seem to exist to messy up the water. Words. When you look beyond the words, MTSS seems to be little more than a PBIS delivery device, focusing more on behavior and less on academics, less on social skills, less on emotional understanding. And here's the thing. If the thing were so good, it wouldn't have to hide behind the words. It would be described clearly and succinctly without all the hyperbole, embellishment, and spin. But why? We're left to ponder the what of MTSS for now. We're left to ponder that, but why? Suffice to say, MTSS is the latest shiny new educational object in an endless line of shiny new educational objects. And when this one goes out of style, as it will inevitably, there'll be another new shiny educational object that will fix things. I've seen this movie before. But one must always ask the bigger question, why? What was the problem for which this was the solution? What was the RTI problem that needed a hearty dose of PBIS and SEL to fix? Why is there a need to combine behaviorism with RTI? When implemented correctly, RTI can be very effective. It can be a powerful way to give students the specific help they need without having to be identified and sucked up into the special education system. MTS has three interconnecting elements used to address what is called the whole child: academic, behavioral, and social emotional. So let's take a look at each. The academic part of MTSS is the RTI part. RTI was designed to get students the immediate help they need in reading, writing, and math without them being formally identified by the special education system. It was designed to avoid the special education system. But MTSS seems to be used to insert the special education system into RTI in the form of PBIS, therefore diluting the original intent of RTI. Behavioral. There are limited places where it is appropriate to use behavioral techniques for certain instances for a limited time. There are also places for teaching and rewarding positive behaviors. In fact, an important part of a classroom teacher's job is to teach correct behaviors and enable students to become more aware of their behaviors. But this is done in the context of a relationship. It's not done in the context of a system or in the context of a PBIS Skinner box. Now, the claim is made that MTSS will address behavior problems impeding learning problems. In this simplistic view of educational reality, you just eliminate the bad behaviors, reward the good behaviors, and learning will magically occur. MTSS has even tied interventions to behaviors. Now, if a school wants to go down this behaviorist road, all well and good, but do it apart from RTI. Don't confuse learning disabilities with behavioral disorders or emotional disorders, whatever these are. And the socially emotional part, who could argue with learning social skills? Who could argue with learning about and coming to understand one's emotions? There's some really great social emotional curriculum and programs out there. These contain skills and information that enable students to understand their own emotions and those of others, as well as to monitor and deal with emotions. This would include intrapersonal skills and understanding and interpersonal skills and understanding. The social part would teach students important social skills that they need to be good human beings. This would include interpersonal skills, understanding of self and others. These could be some of the most important parts of the educational system. They could help students be and become good human beings. However, I get a little nervous when screening, assessment, intervention, data, tiered supports are tied to emotions and social skills. Not everything can be measured and quantified. This creates a dystopian school system where children become numbers. Those who don't fit the system, those whose emotions, social skills, and behaviors are deemed to be disordered or out of order, are seen as defective products and in need of re-education. Those who are normal, compliant, are seen as good little boys and girls and moved along the conveyor belt, which is our educational system. Now, MTSS claims to address the whole child because they include socially emotional learning along with academics and behaviors. However, the whole child here is a buzzword. It is behaviorism masked in a whole child disguise. The whole child is much more than a sum of his or her behaviors. The whole child can't be measured and quantified. The whole child exists in a multidimensional environment outside the school. The whole child exists within a culture, a cultural identity, a racial identity, and within an economic stratum. The whole child includes the social, emotional, physical, cognitive, intellectual, academic, creative, and even the spiritual dimensions. We have to stop the madness. Everyone's looking for the ultimate thing. Some think that if they buy the right program or buy into this for-profit system, this shiny new educational thing, and all their problems will be solved. So they buy into the MTSS idea and they buy expensive programs. They're convinced that MTSS will solve the learning problems, the behavior problems, and the social emotional problems. To which I will say, I'll see you in 5 to 10 years, after you've wasted millions of dollars and countless of hours of teacher time and energy, time that could have been spent learning pedagogical skills and new things. Now, those who say education is wrecked, show me the data. But improving education need not be complicated. You don't need shiny new educational things. This is what you need: better working conditions, smaller class sizes, better teacher pay, more legitimate teacher professional development, and more teacher empowerment and autonomy. But this would cost money, won't it? That's money that's set aside to feed the educational industrial complex. The last thing I'll say here, I'll address equity. The term equity is used frequently in these various MTSS descriptions. However, it's used incorrectly. The MTS assumption is that because everyone has equal access to academic, behavioral, and social emotional sports, that it's equitable. Equitable is different from equal. Equitable refers to fairness and justice. Equitable addresses issues in inequality, disproportionality, systemic racism, as well as ableism and classism that infest our current educational system like a virus. Equitable systems of support would recognize and address the cultural superiority in our curriculums. To be equitable, some need a little more, some need a little less. Equitable means to get according to one's need. For example, a young child and a high school football player could be given the same meal every day. That would be equal. But since the high school football player is expending far more calories, it would not be equitable. MTSS is not equitable. It will not address issues of disproportionality in our special education system. Now, we should be wary whenever academic strategies are mixed with behavioral strategies and mixed again with socio-emotional outcomes. But since behaviors are easiest to measure, manage, and control, these are easier than learning socio or emotional outcomes, there will always be more emphasis on behavior and less emphasis on learning and social and emotional outcomes. The two biggest problems I have with the shiny new thing called MTSS is that it takes away from and dilutes from RTI, and it places the blame on the child for the learning disability, the child's behaviors. Don't be fooled by these fancy charts and pictures and graphs and analogies. It is a PBIS delivery system.